Welcome back to Beautiful Work, Beautiful Life. You're with Laurel Holland today. Laurel Boyven is taking a little break while I interview one of my favorite people and one of my favorite coaches in the whole wide world. Her name is Amber Lilyestrom. She's a dear friend and a colleague. She's a poet, and I would say that she is a leader in the movement of coaches who are helping people build businesses from the inside out, really aligning with your inner life, aligning with your soul's calling, and aligning with the truth of who you want to be and how you want to show up. So Amber is super powerful in her mentorship, in her coaching. Check her out. Make sure you don't leave this podcast without going right to her website and looking at all the things she has to offer. She has to offer so much. I won't get into it all here. She might mention some in our talk today. But we're going to talk about, some of the inner work that Amber's done and her journey and of her inner work in order to have the beautiful life that she lives today. And she's going to have lots of good ideas for you. So stay with us. One of my favorite quotes from Amber is, "If the dream is in you, it's for you." So you dreamers out there, you women out there, you men out there, whoever's listening today who has a dream in you and you wonder, can I get that? Is that for me? It is for you. And let's bring Amber in so she can tell you exactly how and why. Welcome to Beautiful Work, Beautiful Life. I am so glad you're here. I've been dying for you to be here on the show and have your voice come out to the world through my space on the ethers, so to speak. So welcome.
Thank you, Laurel. I'm so honored to be here.
Yeah. And you know what? You have such a beautiful life. I mean, anybody who's watching this on video and not listening to it just on audio, and if you really want to see some beauty, go over and check out the YouTube version of it because Amber's space speaks to the beautiful life that she has. So, Amber, will you please just share a little bit about your beautiful life? What is your beautiful life? How do you define it? Like how are you living it? And then we'll talk about how you got there. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it is the highest expression of who I really am in the season that I'm in. And so, and it's delightful to think about that we'll get to the pieces of the sort of journey to here, but the here looks like I'm a 43-year-old mom of two magical kids, a 3-year-old son and an 11-year-old daughter, and a wonderful best friend husband. And we've built this life that is so abundant and so spacious in all of the ways that we wanted it to be. We're nestled in nature. We live in New Hampshire on a lake, and it's not lost on me how miraculous and beautiful that is to wake up every morning to nature and to be living so close to the seasons, by watching the lake melt and watching it freeze and, just all of the cyclicality that nature brings and getting to have such a front row seat to it. And, I'm a poet. And so I think that I just see through a poet's eyes in all the ways that I live. And so I've just really embody that, in all of the ways that I do my work in the world and serving others. And then also just creating this beautiful experience of life with my family that is, I don't mean to say it in a way that feels sort of morbid, but like it's so fleeting. And we're here for such a short period of time. And the gift is truly being alive. And that's not lost on me. And so I'm always trying to remember and center that in my daily life.
Yeah, I love how if anybody's listening to read and like read between the lines, there was gratitude, 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 gratitude. All woven throughout all that you shared there, which to me is so powerful because for me, it's one of the tenets that I live by, really, that if you want to attract, so to speak, the life that you want to be living, first you start with gratitude for where you are. And I feel like you just expressed that so beautifully in that sharing. Yeah. Yeah, really beautiful. So Amber, interestingly, as you are talking about your family life and who you are and where you are in your life, I was thinking about how even your home is a demonstration of the expansion of your life, your business, of who you are, your inner work, right? And so we can kind of go there a little bit as the outer representation. But will you share just a little bit, like maybe a few highlights from your inner journey, just so people can like get a sense of, well, yeah, you've done your work. I love to have women on here and men that have done their work, because sometimes it's hard to put into words what inner work is. And so people talking about their own journey is a great demonstration of that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, mine started really, really young. The scene I'll drop you into, I was 5 and I was testifying in court against my abuser. And I'm a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. And that set me off on a journey of really needing to do a lot of work really, really early, because if I didn't, I probably wouldn't be sitting here talking to you today. I wouldn't really be okay.
Yeah.
So, earliest memories, lots of trauma, but blessed with parents who had my back and were there to help me get closure and justice and all of those things. But it did require me in some ways, to grow up kind of fast. And I was a more serious kid because I just had this understanding of responsibility, I think, in a way. I was also a firstborn, older daughter. I'm a Virgo. Like, there's all these little elemental pieces that sort of like form parts of my personality. My parents struggled financially and I knew it at a young age. And so it was like, I'm not going to be a burden. I'm going to figure this out. Mm-hmm. And so as a 9-year-old child, I was like, well, I'm going to get a scholarship in soccer and go to college and not make mom and dad have to pay for it. It was just like, that's what I'm going to do. It was like so logical, but it's like so funny when I tell that story, people are like, what? Like, you were
9?
What? And
I know.
Yeah. And I just go, well, yeah, like that was just my life, so it makes me emotional to think about my daughter doing that. But for me, it was just my path. And so, I don't judge it, it just was what it was. It was like how I survived, it's how I got to where I am now, and so there was just a lot of, tectonic plate shifting that happened throughout my childhood into my adolescence. It makes so much sense that I really turned in against myself in my adolescence. There was no place for my emotions to really be acknowledged or witnessed, in any way, shape, or form. And so it was just complicated, and I felt pretty lonely in those years of my life. When I look back, I'm so grateful that I was so focused on a game of all things, right? That where I got to go play, where I got to go express myself on the field. It was like an art form, if you really think about it. It was a place for me to know myself. And, ultimately, I did get that college scholarship and ended up being the captain of my college team, the UNH Wildcats. And I did all the things. But I was definitely like a perfectionist. I needed to achieve, and it was just such a you can feel like that kind of energy. Like, that's how I functioned in life. I wasn't relaxed. I wasn't in flow. It was intense. I developed a bit of an eating disorder with overexercising, restrictive eating. That was a total coping mechanism to have some control. Nobody would have known it per se. But I went, all the way into my 20s. And really, when things started where I really just sort of decided it was like time to grab the reins, was in my late 20s. And I had gotten married to my college sweetheart. And, we had this incredible wedding and we built this beautiful house from the ground up. And we had the cherry floors that, every doorknob was hand selected, pun intended. And I knew that this version of me would never get to exist if I stayed in that relationship. And so it was very quick. It was within like less, a year of that marriage starting, it ended. And I moved myself out and I lived alone for the first time. And everything in my life basically crumbled. My closest relationships just dissolved. And I had to just sit with myself and decide, what is my life going to be about? And
yeah,
I had to remember, like who I really was.
Yeah. 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 It's really interesting. I'm thinking about, so much of what you said, but the 30 being 30 and having
Yeah.
your first real life crisis, emotional breakdown, so to speak, and that
Yeah.
was me in my 30s, right? With kids
Mhm.
and standing there
Mhm.
going, "Oh my God, what am I doing? What am I doing?"
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
And then as hard as it was, right, at 30 to go through that, because we're young, we're just kind of emerging then. What
Mhm.
a gift to begin
So good. So
deeply
good.
the inner
So
work
good.
then, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because look
Yeah.
at all
And
the
it was
gifts you
like,
get.
I
Yeah.
knew intuitively I would be the mother of a daughter. I'd known it my whole life. And I was closer to it. It was like I was about 29, right on the cusp of 30. And I remember just committing to go see a psychiatrist and sitting in her office and doing the work around this eating disorder.
Yeah.
And it was really hard because it was like, she was saying to me, like, this is real, and everybody in my life, including my own mom, was like, you don't have an eating disorder. No, you don't. Like, and I felt embarrassed because I was like, I don't look like somebody like that has an eating disorder. It's just such a mind warp when it comes to food and body. But that was my drug, if you will. Like that was my coping mechanism. We all have something, I think, that we
Yeah.
we use to channel the bigness of the trauma we need to process. And for me, that was my strategy. And I would exercise so much. I was just I did fitness competitions in my 20s, and the only reason I did that was because it fell in line with this obsession with, like, I'm going to try to not be fat.
Yeah.
And it's so dysmorphic because I obviously never was, and it's just I have so much compassion for that version of myself. And so I sat on that couch and I did it, and I went in there every week and I cried those tears and told those stories and faced the hard truths of the things that I wasn't able to see, and I was validated for a lot of things. Growing up with challenging family of origin dynamics, and it was really like light was shined on these aspects of things that I had taken so much ownership for in my life, and I had to reorganize it all in myself, and I had to really decide, how I wanted to do this. But what I knew was I was gonna well, I can't even say it without crying. I was going to be Ani's mom. And I couldn't pass that baton to her.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't sit there in good conscience and perpetuate this pattern one more cycle in my family lineage. It was like, I knew I had to drop it, and I knew I had to be a new version of myself. And so I did that, and I will also say, that was what, 13 plus years ago. But it's been a devotion, it's been such a life devotional work because these pathways become new, right? But it doesn't mean that the old ones just disappear. And so I've had to really devote myself fully to the life that I actually want to live. And I'm so grateful for my kids because I always say, like, they're sort of like, they make it easier. I mean, they make it hard in certain ways, but they make it easier because it's so clear.
In your face.
It's right in your face. And it's like, they're the mirror for the truth.
Yeah.
And so that, I mean, I always say, like, my daughter saved me in so many ways.
Yeah. 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 I hear you. Here's what's coming up for me, which is really interesting.
Mm.
And I want to explore this together because I'd never really thought about this before, actually, as you were talking, right? I was thinking, this perfectionist streak, right? This achieving streak, this I have to take care of business kind of streak, right? When you're young, and it comes in when you're young. I almost feel like it's almost like a saving grace from being able to fall into victim mode,
Mm.
which I'd
Yeah.
never really thought of it that
Yeah.
way before,
That's interesting.
Amber. Yeah,
Yeah, right. I mean, definitely radical personal responsibility has always been a pretty important value for me,
yeah, me
and
too. Yeah,
a sort of like beat to the drum that I've followed.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and I think in the healing work, the real blessing of it, if you really think about it, is, I went through so much suffering. I went through a lot of pain. And so it actually, that radical personal responsibility really kept me from being what my abuser was like in so many ways,
right,
right? It just
right.
and then all the ripples effect of abuse that happens in a family, because then it's like it's familial sides and choosing and estrangement and all these like very confusing things for a small person
Yeah,
that don't really make sense. And so for me, it was like all I knew was there was just so much pain there on all of these levels. And I knew I just didn't want to create a family that operated in that way. And
Yeah.
so it was just very clarifying. And I think all of those little drum beats and all of those little marching steps led me to be able to sit in this chair and have my life feel the way that it does, all these years later.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the reasons that I wanted to kind of tie into that was thinking about, as we work with clients, right? And as you work with so many women in the world that are achieving a lot of good things out here, uh, is this idea of overcoming any victim mentality, right? And as women in the world today, right, many of us have felt oppressed, felt like we have not been able to have our say or use our voices the way we've wanted to. And so we really have to overcome that part, don't we, in order to go forward and achieve what we want?
We do. And I think
Yeah.
the thing I've learned as of late though, and the way that I help facilitate it is through that witness work, and that embrace of that, the truth of the victim,
Yeah.
and the full dimensionality of the self and all of the intelligence of self in choosing the coping mechanisms and the patterns that they chose. It's like I never want to make a client feel wrong
Yeah.
for being who and how they are and having walked the path the way they have, because it's all been perfect to help them get to here.
Yeah.
And so there's something really this is the word that's coming through, like almost glorifying them of like, look at you, like you were so wise and so intelligent to choose what you chose to get to here. And now you can look at this whole thing and you can be in that empowerment seat. Yeah.
Yeah.
And in the identity of your truest, highest self, who is on the path in your most purposeful purpose, frankly.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so this idea of witnessing, right? In the work that we do, many of us can learn it, right? Go to therapy, come into these programs that you and I've offered over time, and learn how to be witnesses to one another, right? We don't have to necessarily send our kids out to be witnessed, right? We can do it for our children at home.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so let's talk a little bit about the witnessing process, right? And will you
Mhm.
share a little bit about how when you have, people come into your programs, like how that's a part of the experience there? Because I know that you weave a lot of inner work as well as
Yeah.
the business work into
Yeah. Yeah.
what you do. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, what I've learned along the way is that the reason why most people struggle to grow in their business is because their inner work has gotten them to a certain place, and then these subconscious blocks come up, and these stories and these truths that feel like they're in conflict with each other. And so, when we just stay on the strategic path, we miss the cause, and the sort of the root of what's really creating the constriction or the hiding, or the money stress and drama or whatever it might be. There's usually lots of different dimensions that we can go in. And so the sitting with the isness of it, I mean, really, if we get fundamental at the root of all things, I mean, I think the highest purpose of life is to be able to embrace the mundane. I mean, I think the most magical thing, I'm a major student of the gene keys. And Richard Rudd said that if you were to add a 65th gene key, there's 64. If he was to add a 65th, the shadow would be hope, which I thought was so fascinating. And then the city, which is the sort of like the highest, the divine essence piece, would be ordinariness. And I think that we have such grand ideals that we should be something other than what we are. And so witness work feels like it's not about redemption. It's about reconciliation with self. It's about rejoining self. It's about remembering and honoring self, because you can't create something meaningful that's going to actually work in the world outside of self. And so my work is about holding people, like bringing you back to yourself and then helping you create your own design. And I think, just to share from my own vantage point, for a lot of years on my 11-year journey of being a business mentor and coached entrepreneurs, I have felt often, Laurel, that something was sort of wrong with me because I want to do this really deep witness work and design my business in a way that is very intimate with lots of one-to-one coaching and spending time with people. And I felt, the sort of modern methodology, and a lot of people are out there saying like one to many, grow, scale, get bigger. And I just couldn't jive with it. It's just sort of like, yeah, I don't know. But I, of course, instead of being like, that's cool for you, this is what I'm going to do, sort of tormented myself that I had this other way of thinking. And blessedly in the last few years, I've really, sort of rooted into like, this is my design and this is the way that I'm meant to work. And this is how my gift is meant to work in the world. And what I've learned from it is it's so deeply meaningful and it's so liberatory in its nature because it gives people permission to just be themselves. And of course, I had to go through my own process of not being myself, right? To then come back to being it so that I can now help other people do that too.
Yeah, which is so beautiful because this it creating from the inside out, the ability to really truly live into who we are at our deepest level is so satisfying, right? Isn't it so satisfying then to look
Yes.
out at your life and say, this is me now,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this
But
is.
I mean, I'll tell you, I didn't really know how to do that,
Well,
up
nobody
until just
teaches
very
us.
recently. Like,
Yeah.
I felt like so, like, it's so silly. I say it's like a reverse imposter syndrome. You're like, I don't feel okay being what I actually am. It's so crazy. But, yeah, I mean, I've exhaled into my life now and, everything just feels lighter, because I'm delighting in what my life actually is. And it's just, I'm so grateful for it. And I, again, like what I said earlier, I don't take it for granted. It's been a rocky road to get to the level of enjoyment and the level of, fulfillment that I experience on a daily basis in my world.
Yeah, yeah. So did you have an aha moment around the like desire for intimacy that you talk about,
Yeah.
in working with clients? So do you remember your aha moment?
Yeah, I'd hired a friend who is a strategist type person, and I'm just like explaining everything under the sun, and this is what I do, and how do you trying to figure out how to explain it, da 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 da, and she was just like, so why don't you just do that? It was like that simple, like why don't you just like work with people like that? And I was like, oh well, I do, and she was like, okay.
Where's the
It's
conflict?
just like
Yeah.
so simple. And so then it was like, wait, I can give myself permission to just do it the way that I want to do it. And then what was really neat about that was it wasn't the first time I heard it, right? But it was like my neural pathway heard it enough times that it was like synapse connected, here we are.
Yeah.
And then what it did was it just all of the other places in my life where I've done that exact thing, like choosing to homeschool our daughter and choosing to build this thing and, live in the woods and choosing to retire Ben from his police career and choosing to walk away from my corporate career to build this business from the ground up when I had one client say yes. Like it was like all of those moments where I was like, so I can just go do that, and it felt exactly like that.
Yeah.
And then and here's the thing, you're right. Going back to what you just said, one of the earliest revelations I had on this journey was this recognition that I did not know that my life belonged to me.
Yeah.
So I remember in my early 30s, becoming a mom and starting to build our own family and then making this decision at, I think I was 30, 31, 32, almost 32 to launch my business, that like I was allowed to just make that decision for my life. Like nobody ever said that to me. And so it's something I say to my children all the time. I'll say to Ani, honey, this is your life. Like who does your life belong to? We'll just be driving in the car like, Ani, who does your life belong to? She's like, me? I'm like, and who's in charge of how you feel? Me? And I just like ask her these questions to remind her of her sovereignty and her ownership of herself and her path. And no one ever said that to me. And so I remember feeling like sort of embarrassed along the way because it was like, oh my gosh, why did I not know this? And so then to like live into that liberation it's just, yeah, it's really, really cool. It's a really fun sensation.
Yeah, yeah, it feels really good. One of the things when I was doing your introduction well, the thing I ended with when I was doing your introduction was my favorite quote of yours, which is, "If the dream is in you, it's for you." And so, will you share a little bit about, let's say, just talking into, your own version of experiencing that, right? Having that dream in you, and then like how you do a little coaching, like how you coach people to like own that dream, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think like when we look at the anatomy of a dream, if we sort of like dissect it and really kind of get into it, that famous Steve Jobs quote of like, you can't connect the dots going forwards, but you can going backwards. And so if I look back on my path and look at the dots, when I was going through what I went through at a very young age, I remember having this moment, this God moment, saying to me, this didn't happen to you for nothing. You will help people from this. And I remember I was just like playing with my Barbies on the rug and I thought,
Huh.
okay. Yeah. Okay. Like I registered it. I was like, okay. And I had this vision drop into my head in the moment of myself like speaking and writing books at 5.
Wow.
I did. I had it.
Wow.
And so all my life, I remember, as I got older, I remember being in high school and then going to college. I remember being in college thinking like, when does that happen? Like when does that vision thing that I had happen? Because I always knew it never went away. It was like always sort of there for me.
Mm.
And I remember when my daughter was born, I had a near-death experience. So I stopped breathing on the operating room table when Ani was born. And the first thing that came into my awareness when I was in the unconscious space, my body was physically not awake to the room, was that vision. And it was the words, "You're not doing it." And so it was like this really interesting, like full circle moment of, girlfriend, it's always been here. It is time. You're never going to feel ready. You must go now. And so
Yeah, right.
I
You
had
have to
this,
do it. You got to do it.
you gotta put your little one foot in front of the other. And I did. I left my corporate career when Ani was 9 months old, and I built the business, and I've spoke on the stages, and I've written the books, and I'm literally doing it every single day. And not exactly how I saw it in my vision, but like I'm living my life's purpose and path, and it's very clear. Some people will say to me, well, that's awesome, but I didn't have a vision when I was 5 years old. And I don't feel like I've really ever had a dream. And I just feel sort of like I'm lost. And that's a really hard place to be. And I have a lot of empathy and compassion for that, because there's a sense of floating in a way. And I think my husband's felt that in different moments. And so what I like to explain, because we're all wired so differently, dreams weren't something that he grew up having his family talk about. People weren't talking about dreams in his house, and my family, they did, it was mostly athletically inclined, but that language was happening in my home. But in my husband's, it wasn't, not much emotional language at all. And so in the work with him, it's been more about just like, what do you enjoy? What makes you feel alive? And then as his best friend, as his beloved wife, it's like, I notice when you do this, you seem to have like a sparkle in you. Like there's a part of you that just is like, I don't see that in the everyday. We should give you more time for that, and then having the conversations in our family about dreams, like really bringing it to the table and asking our kids, like, what are your dreams? And what does it feel like in your body when you're doing something you really, really love, and do you think that's your dream? And just playing, in that liminal space and that emotional space with our people, and giving language to it, because we're not all going to have that sort of like arrow pulled back right to the bullseye kind of dream approach that I've had. But that's just my design, and so I like to kind of take anatomy of a dream and like make that more broad and make it more playful for people, and understand it's really about your aliveness. It's really about where you step into the knowing of yourself in a way that usually doesn't make a lot of sense, and helping people understand their own sensibility around how they manifest, how they dream, how they like to create vision for themselves in their life. And again, vision is a visual word, and not everybody sees. Not everybody's a seer. Some people hear things. Some people have a tactile expression. Some people just have ideas that pop up, And so I think there's this other piece when I'm coaching with folks. It's like learning what that profile and that languaging is for them, because we're all so unique and so different.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad you went there with all of that because I feel like, some of the language out there, especially, in the coaching world, and I think it's driven the bus a little bit, the coaching world around
Mm.
this is like finding your life purpose, and having a life purpose. And so if I think when people feel like they don't know theirs, there's something wrong or there's
Yeah.
something missing. And I always feel like if that's where we're starting, if that's where you're starting, then, you know, if you have no other purpose in your life, it's first and foremost to know yourself.
Yes.
And if you can
Right.
decide that that's first your purpose to be here, then let's see what comes from that, right? And so I
Mm.
feel like that's almost what you laid out, is this
Yeah.
idea of if you aren't connected with that or aren't connected with a dream or a sense of this is what I'm here to do, then just get to know yourself really well. What do you love? What excites
Hmm.
you? What makes you feel alive? What do you feel like you really care about when you look around that feels like it's not right or out of order? And where do you want to put your beautiful energy?
Yeah.
And that certainly will set you on some pathway of action of some kind. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think this binary way of that we look at
Yeah.
life, it makes people feel like they're wrong so often. And my message back to you is like, how could you be wrong?
Yeah.
How could being who you are be wrong in any way, shape, or form? And so that's where I like to get very curious with people and then champion their unique design and help them understand more about themselves. And then the next piece is, I really believe our businesses are they're just a form of expression. They're just a way for us to activate our gifts and for us to be on the life's path of meeting ourselves. And so then it's like, okay, well, how would you do that? And in my world, there just is no right or wrong way. It's really what's your unique way. And all of my offers and all that are just continuing to become even more streamlined around creating space for people to meet themselves and to learn more about themselves in these really cool modalities and tools that I'm now weaving into my work. So yeah, it's fun. It's like a little treasure hunt with people.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think the treasure hunt, for all of us, right, is to find our true self, right? And when you find that treasure of your true self, it's a life-changing
Yeah.
experience because then it's like, okay, now we're deciding from here on the inside
Yeah.
what's meaningful, right? And
Hmm.
the reality is, we'll come back to if you feel like you're lost out there or you don't know where to begin, right? Is just to know that you've been conditioned in a certain way so far to get to
Yes.
here.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it's okay, right? You
And
can
I think
start to, yeah.
everything you're going to try to do, you're probably going to bump up against conditioning that's going to tell you that you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
And so just expect it. And when you get to that, I mean, that's really like I had to turn the shirt inside out to really see that. Like it's still a shirt when it's inside out. And oh, I'm a business mentor who's also a poet. And those two things have felt like antithetical to one another. And yet, when I decided to go all in on just like seeing through a poet's eyes and living like that, my business has felt so much more fulfilling and joy producing. And everything that I'm creating it's like I don't have the trauma response stress in my body anymore. I'm so relaxed in my work. And that piece that's profound coming from someone who spent most of her life gripped like a little ball in anxiety and adrenals that are, stressed to the max and going 100 miles per hour and so strong she could lift the world, like I don't have to operate like that anymore. And so finally it's really taken me until my 40s to love my body now and love her for what she is and how she is and do that healing work. And because I'm so cerebral, like dropping from being such a mind person because it was a safety mechanism to like full deeper, I'm still not all the way there, but more embodiment and really living in this beautiful vessel home that I'm here in. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. There's so much left brain, right brain stuff about what you were talking about, like and I think that's part of like knowing ourselves, right? And then honoring how we operate in the world
Yeah. Yeah.
is recognizing like all of those things and then learning how they can serve us, not disserve us, right? And a lot of times when we have it so they're creating disservice in us is when it creates that anxiety and the stress and so isn't that a marker? Don't you find that you're with people as you're coaching and you're out there, like one of the markers is, wow, if this is producing anxiety in you, then something here is out not in alignment or not right for you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And it's just like not a thing anymore. So I feel so grateful for that because it's taken a lot of devotion to the work to unravel these aspects of myself. And then, like you said earlier, match the inside to the outside. And that congruence piece is such a marker for true success for me, that I'm who I am everywhere all the time, and that there's no difference in the version of me that you meet anywhere. And I don't feel like I have to put on in any way in my life in any sphere that I exist in. And that's all just a huge relief.
Yeah.
And again, something that I've had to work at.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I feel like I feel like we could go a lot of different places, but I feel like it's probably a good time for us to like wrap here. And I think what's coming up for me, interestingly, is asking you, what are you dreaming about these days?
I am,
Because it's interesting, isn't it? When you have your dreams
yeah,
fulfilled, like
yeah, yeah.
there's a whole new experience of dreaming, isn't it? Don't you find that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I'm less attached to it. I think honestly, one of my biggest dreams is living. One of my words for this year was enjoy. And the joys in all caps, like
Yeah.
enjoy my life and the moments and slowing down time and being in it. So that's one major focal point for me. When it comes to like achieving things and all of that, I'm working on my next poetry book that your beautiful daughter is going to help me design because she helped me do Paddle Home, my first poetry book. So we're talking about that and getting that into the world. Yeah, we're still thinking about expanding our family through adoption. So that's exciting to be dreaming into.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, just family and just deep intimate work, those are the things, and travel to go see beloved friends. And we built this space up here that's also a guest house. So inviting friends in specifically in the summertime, it's so wonderful here on the lake, and making memories and just like really having a front row seat to the magic of this moment, of this being here right now.
Yeah, yeah. Do you feel like your business is somewhat self-sustaining at this point in terms of how you operate it, so that it's lets you really truly live into the way you're talking? I mean, you have to have the financial stability, right, to be able to really enjoy life
Yeah.
and take
Yeah.
a step away, right? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. It's funny. My answer to that is it just has to, because it just does. And so I used to get really squirreled up, about, oh, where are the clients going to come from and what do I have to do, and toe touches and split leaps and all the things. And what I've really realized is like when I'm living on my soul path, I am sharing from that place. I am rock solid in how I support and serve. My work sells itself, and I just continue to put in the reps, right? It's like as a Division I soccer player, you're not going to be able to get playing time if you're not putting in your reps and doing the sprint workouts and practicing your craft. And so I'm so committed to my craft. And I've also put really just like very clear boundaries around how and when I work. And I don't go over those bounds, and I don't need to. And so you can feel it's like a zip up of my own energy of like, this is how my work works. This is how I help. It's set up in this certain way. Like I've built the model in a very particular intentional way so that it does the things that it needs to do for us financially. And that's its job. And so I let my business do its job and I do mine. And when those things are in harmony, when I'm showing up on my side and my business is doing its part, it's like it does exactly what it was designed to do. And so, I'm really just grateful for that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So anybody out there that's listening to Amber and is like, wow, how did she do that? Well, you can find out how she did that by working with her. So all the info will be in the show notes for you to look at Amber's website and connect with her and find out how to join in on the goodness that's going on over there in your world. Because, yeah, the women that work with you are out there shining their lights everywhere. And we need that big time, don't we?
We sure do. And
Oh,
they're
boy, do
amazing.
we
Yeah.
ever. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your beautiful light, your beautiful voice, and your story today.
Thanks, Laurel.
So
I appreciate
appreciate
you.
you and all that you're doing. Yeah.
Same.
All right. Off we go. Bye for now, everybody. Thanks again, Amber.
Thank you, Laurel.